Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so today we are going to talk about requirement analysis and design definition. So let's say how to define a requirement and how to validate it. Okay, so what are the stages? Okay, to if you get a requirement, right, what are the different stages? First is you need to specify and model the requirements. That is means you are designing the requirement in detail, and then you have to verify and then validate. I'll tell you what's the difference between verify and then validate. And then once we validate all that, we need to define the architecture, right, like how that data flow is happening from one requirement to another requirement, and how that overall um, each requirement is connected. Okay, so we have to do that too. We have to structure all the requirements and the design so that we'll know overall, right, how that project is data flow is flowing from one requirement to another requirement. And then after that we'll be having different solutions. How are we going to explore all the different solutions, and then what are the recommended solution? Because for one design, the architects may be coming up with multiple, actually, for this one requirement, right, they may be coming up with multiple designs. So we have to focus on which is the correct solution, and what is the value of each solution, and what will be the recommended solution. Okay, let's go one by one. So first is specify and model the requirements. So what do you mean by model requirements? So whenever you're getting a requirement, right, so you are getting it by multiple ways. Okay, first is you are asking the business owners, you're asking them to join a call, and then you are asking them can you give me a requirement, and everybody is saying something. Okay, let's say there are four different business owners, and everybody is giving this is how I want, this is how I want, and all that. Okay, now you are gathering all the points and you are documenting it. Still, it is not a final data flow, which is getting their opinions or getting their ideas, and this is how they want, like that. You get the idea and you document it. Okay, this is like any state. We are not confirming anything. Whatever the business owner is telling you, you're just gathering the requirements, or you can say that whatever their opinions, right, everything you are gathering, and then you are documenting it. Okay, and then once you gather those requirements, right, you need to make sure from your perspective, from a documentation perspective, what are we going to do? Are we going to have any diagrams, which I mean any pictures, or we are going to how are we going to portray those requirements? Okay, so either you can do some diagrams or you can do some matrices, for example, the requirements traceability matrix, or any kind of Excel sheet, or yeah, so you can do that too. Or diagrams is most popular because they are non-technical people. So once you draw diagrams, right, they'll be able to understand it more. Okay, so you do. So once you get the requirements, you either do it in Excel sheet, you write down whatever they say, and then show it to them, or you document it however is easy for you, and then you can show it to them. Or you can draw diagrams. Okay, diagrams is very easy, on a high level. What's a data flow diagram? What is the architectural diagram? Or how, according to whatever requirements they're given, right, how you want it, whether you have understood correctly, like that you can do diagrams. So these are two ways for modeling. So once you do that, okay, once you do some kind of documentation, now you have to determine who is actually um, the right people for confirming those requirements. So for example, we have to take a stakeholders list. Okay, and then we need to understand from all the four business owners, who is the person who has to approve all this design or who has to approve all these requirements? Who is that one point of contact who will be providing us the sign off? So you need to understand how many people are involved in this project, what are their roles, and who will be that person who will be like providing that sign off. Okay. And so when we define the people's roles, or when we define like who is responsible for what, then it's easy for us to actually like get approval, right? If we know that okay, this person is a final person who has to approve our requirements, then it's easy for you. We can be like showing all the documents to them, make sure they review it properly and get the sign off. So once you write the diagrams, or once you document in your Excel sheet or Word document, now you need to like analyze the each requirement. So anything that must like all the requirements, right, whether they are according to the business need, okay, and whether we are missing any components, where there are any unnecessary components, or we have any kind of like dependencies or any constraints, or like what is like for each requirement, right? So this is how you analyze a requirement. Okay, for any given requirement, for example, like if you take here, we've written on some kind of requirements here, right? So if you take any requirement here, whether this requirement is like from a Babcock standpoint, I'm telling, okay, according to them, okay, whether this requirement is meeting the business need, whether we are missing any components, and whether they are unnecessary any components, what are the assumptions we have for this requirement. So for just take this, and then you need to analyze each requirement, and then you have to make sure, okay, now if it is nothing, there is no constraint, or there is no like unnecessary components, this is like written very well, then then you have like properly analyzed this requirement, right? That's how we analyze each and every requirement. Okay, so and then like when we write a requirement, most important tool is like, most important what you have to understand is the scope of this. Okay, so when we write down anything, right, whether this is within our scope, whatever we agreed on, whatever like initially when the process owners or the business owners like we agreed on, this must be entirely within their scope. So these requirements also, even if you write all your stories in your Jira board, okay, your business owners, right, they will have access to it. Okay, so they will have access to it, they'll be able to see all this, and you can always link, if you click on link, right, you can link multiple issues here. So if you see here, it is like cloned by, duplicated by, you have a lot of options here. If you see, okay, if you see, right, you can link issues. So if this relates to, this is duplicated, this clones, this is blocked by, so you can always put this relates to, and you can always like search for multiple, if there are any other requirements, and you can tag those requirements. Okay, I'm tagging this, okay, link. So now this requirement is linked to another requirement. That's how like you make sure all the requirements are connected. So when a business owner is like opening this requirement, right, and then they'll be able to see, okay, these are the other stories that is linked to this user story, and they'll be like taking a look at it, and they'll be like, okay, we have all the stories, all the requirements in place. So this is an easy one. So we have to make sure that all the user stories are connected, and all the user stories are within scope, and each and every requirement is like thoroughly analyzed, and make sure it's like for example, you can always attach your documents. So if you click on attach, it will be asking you like many you can just attach all your documents. Okay, so for anything like for this particular requirement, whatever documentation you're going to have, you can always attach it here. And also you can always create a subtask for your developers or your testers. Like for this requirement, this is a development requirement, and somebody wants to test the scenario, you create a subtask. Okay, create a subtask, and like how we're going to test it, and create a testing task here itself under it, so that the developer and the tester will understand how to test this requirement, right? So you can always create subtask, and also you can link multiple issues, and also if you see here, right, assignee, so this is assigned to whom it is assigned. Okay, whether it's assigned to you, whether it is assigned to the developer, or whether it is assigned to a testing, like we can always pull. So if I click here, right, it's showing only the training name, but if you have multiple users, it will show their name too, and you can just take a name and then you can just assign it. Okay, and the reporters can also always be your business owners, so you can always tag their name. Okay, so every user story, whatever we are creating, whatever we are creating here can be always linked to other user stories. You can always create a subtask, and always you can track it. Okay, it is very very easy for us to track it. So give me one, I'm sorry about that. So we have to you have to make sure that all these requirements are being tracked properly, and we are going to make sure these are documented very well. Now once we document that, we how can we verify and validate? Okay, so let's say verify requirements. Okay, when we always verify the requirements, like here as we said that this is specified and model, means you are already documenting it, you are already putting it in your Jira board, and it is well structured, and everything is properly written and all that. Okay, give me 1 second. It's loud, Sarvan, it's loud. Sarvan is loud. It's loud. Sarvan is loud. It's loud. Okay, so once you written all the documents, all the requirements, right? Now it is called as specified and modeled requirements. Okay, earlier it is like in any state, but once you document it here, okay, you have specified everything, you are attached your all your documents related to this particular requirement, you added everything, you linked all the issue, you created subtask, you've done all the kind of grooming here, you added the sprint, not the sprint but the reporter or who was going to work on, so you added everything. So now it is specified and modeled. So this requirement is very well structured, and we have used everything. So now what are we going to do? How are we going to verify the requirements? When we verify the requirements, this is a very very important interview question. How that requirement should be, what's the quality of a requirement, or we can say that if you see in that interview question, they may be asking requirement definition. Can you give me a definition of a requirement? Okay, so this is one of the interview questions. So if they say that can you tell me what are the characteristics of a requirement, how a quality requirement should be there, you can say all this. First of all, it needs to be atomic. Atomic means it is self-contained and it is being understood by everybody. Whoever reads this requirement is able to understand the requirement. Anybody, developer, testers, anybody, business owners, your project manager, anybody who logs in and see the requirement, they must be able to understand the requirement. Okay, that means it is atomic. Okay, when the interview, if they ask you, please say all these words. Okay, atomic, it's complete. Complete in the sense, I have already told you, you have attached all the documents for that particular requirement, any kind of process flow diagrams or any kind of test scenarios or any kind of documentation, whatever you created for that particular requirement, you are attaching it so that the requirement is complete. Okay, so enough to guide further work, an appropriate level of detail in that particular work. So the developer is not asking many questions. Thoroughly he is able to understand the requirement and he can develop. So a requirement needs to be atomic, a requirement needs to be complete. Also it needs to be consistent. What it may consistent? One of the requirements should not be conflicting with other. So you write something, a requirement here, and then you write a conflicting requirement. Okay, so both are conflicts. So for developer be asking should I do this one or this one? Do not write requirements like that. Okay, so you need to know end to end how the data is flowing. Only then you won't be writing conflicting requirements. Okay, you need to know that. So consistent and not conflicting and concise. Okay, no unnecessary content, no all that extra so much of paragraph wise, putting everything in paragraphs. It's very hard for anybody to read. So it needs to be very crisp. Always your requirement needs to be in 1 or 2 lines or 3 lines, and in description you can put everything, but on the heading, right? Whenever you use a story heading, it needs to be always in one liners. And in description also, right, don't put like multiple paragraphs. It's very hard for anybody to interpret and all. Okay, don't put that. So but you need to put, detailing should be there, but it needs to be in a very in a crisp manner. Okay, so no unnecessary content. And also like feasible in the sense like we have to make sure like it is within our risk, within our schedule, and within our budget. And we have to also make sure that this is like whatever we agreed upon within our budget. Okay, you don't develop something out of our budget. You don't put a requirement that is like not calculated within our risk or within our scope or within our schedule. Maybe to develop this it will take maybe like 2 sprints or something. Don't put such large requirements. You always need to break down the requirements. I've already told you the maximum points is 13. I mean like but we have to make sure within 8 pointers, because the sprint time could be very limited. And the requirement, if it is a very big huge requirement, right, then we have to like break down into part 1, part 2, or part 3, like that. You have to break down this requirement and make sure that every requirement is something like around 8 pointers. We don't want to have some 13 pointers or more than that for a requirement. It's going to be very complex requirement, and it's going to be very difficult for a developer to develop that requirement. So what we have to do is discuss with your technical team and break down the one story into multiple stories. Okay, you need to break down one story into multiple stories, and then you have to make sure that this is not exceeding 8 pointers. Okay, so if you have a huge complex requirement, right, break down that into small user stories, and then make sure it's doable within that particular sprint. Okay, so that is like feasible. And then unambiguous, okay, the requirement must be clearly stated in such a way it's clear. I've already told you. And it needs to be testable. So when we take a particular requirement, right, any kind of development requirement, right, we need to test this. Okay, so you have to create a test case scenario, and then like what are the positive scenarios, what are the negative scenarios, how are we going to test this requirement. So maybe in advanced training I can show you a test case, or maybe I'll take a requirement and I'll tell you like how to test it. So for example, like this is like user ID and password, right? So the positive scenario is both valid user ID. As a user, I'm entering a valid user ID and a valid password. Okay, the scenario is it should log in. Okay, valid user ID, invalid password. Okay, do not log in. And invalid user ID and a valid password, do not log in. Or both the invalid user ID and an invalid password, do not log in. So there are 4 scenarios for this login. Okay, so you need to test all the scenarios. You need to write down all the scenarios and how we're going to test. Okay, so so this data, whatever we're using for testing, should be from the QA region. Okay, from these are like dummy data. We are not going to give any kind of real-time user ID and password, and we are not going to test it. Okay, we are doing this in a test environment, so all the data is going to be a dummy data. So you need to have those test data available in the database. Okay, so that it is like accepting the values. So we need to make sure those values are configured in the QA region, and then you write the test scenario or the test case. Okay, so like I told you, you take a test scenario and then you write like for a particular scenario, for a particular test case. Okay, this is a test case. Login is a test case. In this you have like 4 different scenarios. Okay, difference between a test scenario and a test. I think that was one of a question. What is the difference between test scenario and a test case? Okay, test case means like login functionality. We are going to like test this functionality. Okay, what is a test scenario? Like a valid username and password login. That is one scenario. Okay, so valid user ID, invalid password, it should not log in. That's another test scenario. So you understand the difference. Test case means like this one functionality we are going to like test, but test scenario is each and every like specific positive scenarios or negative scenarios, whatever it is, we have to like test. For example, for this enroll, okay, we take this enrollment page. So how are we going to test this this test case? So the account number needs to be valid. It needs to be only 6 digits. We have a limitation here. And the social security number or the tax ID number should be available. Both needs to be valid for the member to enroll. Okay, if valid account number, valid SSN number or tax ID number, the scenario is it needs to create a like we need the member can enroll himself, right? So that the account needs to be created. Okay, valid a card number, account number, and then invalid social security or tax ID number, then it should not create. Okay, do not enroll. Then for example, like invalid account number, valid SSN, do not enroll. And then in account number they are putting like only like after 6 digits, for example, like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 I'm not able to enter, so there is a limitation. See, I'm trying to enter 7 but it's not entering, so that is also like we have a limit, right? It should not enter. Okay, only 6 digits, and that 6 digits should be like the last 6 digits of the card number or the account number. So we have to test that scenario too. And like for example, SSN 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. So when I am entering the SSN, right, it is not showing for the member, right? Even though I'm entering, it is not showing because it's a SSN number. It's a secured number. The member is not able to see the number actually. So that is also a requirement. So all this can be a test scenarios, but the test case, like overall, the test case is like for this enrollment page. That's the difference between test scenario and a test case. Okay, I think it's they've asked. So when the interview, if they ask, right, you need to like explain like this with examples. And so every requirement needs to be testable, and then every requirement, whatever you are putting in Jira, needs to be tested by the developers in their dev environment. They should be able to test it. They should be able to do their unit testing, and in QA region, the QA people, they have to they must be able to test. So there is like manual testing or automation, like whatever they prefer, like however they want to test, they can test. And then finally UAT testing, like we have to like coordinate with the business owners and do the UAT testing. So we make sure every requirement is testable and prioritize. So what is the importance of this particular requirement against all the other requirements? So there are like 4 different requirements in the Jira board. Okay, let's say that for example, there are so many requirements in the Jira board. Which requirement is the top priority? Which one our developer has to focus on the next sprint, and which one needs to be developed first? Okay, that is priority. Okay, next is like understandable. So this is like we already told, any requirement needs to be understood by everybody whoever is seeing the requirement, right? They have to understand. So when they ask in the interview, what are the characteristics of a requirement, or can you define a requirement? However, can you tell me in plain English how a requirement should be? Please say all these words, but also with examples. Don't be very theoretically, don't say. So take an example. Like I said, like take any simple example and then explain all these terminologies. Okay, now how are we going to verify? Okay, how are we going to verify each requirement? So whenever we are verifying each requirement, right, we also need to make a like a checklist of like are we like validating against a particular issue, or are we validating against like the items in scope? Okay, so for example, like you can always have a template, or you can always, like the RTM, you can have a template, or you can have like a checklist of whether the top 5 requirements are being like properly written, whether for the next sprint, like, or whether all my requirements are being documented. First of all, you need to put all the requirements in Jira board. Okay, only you will know, the developer will not know. So anything like the first top 5 requirements, right, you have to put that in Jira board. Do not miss any requirements. So you can have your internal checklist of like what is the top 5 priority from the business owners, whether all those requirements are being documented. Because since you'll be working with multiple people and multiple like schedules, and you'll be having constantly sessions, you may also forget to document a requirement, and sometimes it is a miss. Sometimes we may miss a requirement, we don't know. The developer also will not know, because he will not be in all the business calls, and the business owners may not be able to, they'll be like, okay, the business analyst will take care of it, and they don't check the dashboard, and you think that it's already documented. So sometimes some of the requirements may get missed. Okay, so we have to make sure that you all the requirements are like properly documented, do not miss any requirements, so you can have a checklist and you can always like verify your requirements. Okay. And yeah, and once the requirements are verified, then I said that once we verify all the requirements, we need to like validate. So validate in the sense you are giving the requirements to the business owners and you are like asking them to like check. Okay, so we are making sure that everything is within the scope, everything is within our whatever criteria we agreed upon, like everything is. So what you do is you ask the business owners to see all this user stories, give the links. Okay, whenever I open this, there will be a link given. So if you see here, share it, or you can get the link. Okay, so get the link, or you can always copy the number. So you will get this number, right? So you can copy link to issue. You can get the number, story number, share this story number to the business owners, and then you can always like ask them to verify. Okay, so you verify the requirements, make sure they are in scope, and once you get the confirmation and they are fine, it means um, it is like validated. Okay, when we say validate means you are always like cross checking with your business owners whatever requirement you write is correct or not. Okay, so you can say that. So again, something you're always exchanging your requirement with the stakeholders, and you're validating the solution scope, whether it is in scope or out of scope, whether whatever requirement that we are writing here is like aligned. Okay, I have to tell you about some of the diagrams that you will be using. Okay, so let's say, see here, these are the techniques, okay, for this architecture. What is scope modeling? What is like data modeling? Okay, so for example, like any kind of requirement, right? If you don't know how to actually give a model, okay, so you're very blank, you don't know like how am I going to draw the diagram, I don't know about how to represent this and show it to the business owners, or how am I going to like, this is a very complex requirement, how am I going to like break down this requirement? Whenever you have those questions, right, you always go to this functional decomposition. This is also an important technique. Functional decomposition is nothing but you're breaking down the scope. Okay, so you're breaking, for example, let me take that healthcare project, sample healthcare claim. Okay, so we are using this. So this website has some like how a healthcare claim needs to look and all that, with the barcode and everything they're giving you. So I'm just taking this as an example. This is a healthcare claim, and then let's say like a project is okay. Now the project is a paper claim is coming. As I said, it's coming to your company. Let's say like it's coming to Cigna. Okay, Cigna is your company. It's coming to Cigna, and then the paper claim has to be picked up by your scanning application. So we have a scanning machine, or maybe a scanning application. It's not a machine. Let's say application, scanning software, and then this paper claim is being scanned by that software, and from that software, what it has to pick is it needs to pick that machine, right? Scanning application has to pick whatever is there in that PDF. Okay, whatever you have it in this PDF, for example, first name, last name, and or the ID, or we can say that all the diagnosis code, all the fields, it has to pick up everything. It has to, so the requirement is from the business owner is it needs to pick up all the so it needs to pick all the data. Okay, it needs to pick all the data, and then it has to like store the data in the database. Okay, store the data in the database. And if it's a valid claim, okay, if it's a valid, all the values are there, what it has to do is it needs to send this information to a claim auditor or a claim processing person. That is a human being. Okay, claim processing team. Okay, so from the claim processing team, from their front end, UI perspective or from their front end screen, right? What they'll be able to see is, they when they log in every day morning, when they log in, they must be able to see a claim. That's a process, like a valid claim. They must be able to see all the information, and they have to like um, process this claim in the sense whether like they have to estimate whether this is a proper claim. They have to do all their validations from their side, and they have to like check the box stating that this claim is processed. Okay, processed means that money, when we say a claim is processed, means it is all the information in the claim is correct, and we are validating the claim. And when we say claim is processed, that amount, whatever money, right, whatever for that particular claim, it goes to the providers. Providers means doctors. Okay, so this is a project. Okay, let's say this is a data flow. There is a paper claim. The doctor has to fill all the information for the member, or the member himself, they can submit a claim. Okay, it is coming to your company, and all the paper claims it's coming, and in there, like in your company Cigna, they are there's a scanning application and there's a scanning team, and through the scanning application, that's not like a normal scanning machine. Okay, so this is like the application that maybe your team or someone third party has to develop, and then um, that validation that application is doing. For example, member ID needs to be there, or maybe date of birth needs to be there, all that basic validations, right? That scanning application itself, they are doing it. It's picking up all the essential data, and then once it scans, it pulls all the data, and it automatically stores into a database. And then what happens is, that image, whatever we are scanning, right, that image as well as the data, both is being going to the processing team. And from the front end perspective, when a claims auditor or a claims person, from their front end, when they log in every day, they must be able to see the image. Okay, whatever is the scanned image, they must be able to see those image, and they must be able to process this claim. They have to do the validation, and then they have to do enter all the whether it's like a proper claim or whether it's a rejected claim, whatever is their notes, their comments, they have to put, and they have to like click it as processed or rejected, whatever it is. Once it is processed, right, then it goes to a finance team or a different team, where they will be sending their money to the providers. Okay, this is the data flow. Now when the business owners, they are giving you this data flow, you need to make sure you're not missing anything. For example, when it comes to the scanning application, we are doing a validation here, right? What is a validation? Member ID needs to be mandatory. Okay, if member ID is not there, then we are rejecting those. Okay, here we are doing a validation here. If the member ID is not there, then how we will know like where can the data be stored in the database? It's complex for us to determine who's a member, how their information can be stored. Okay, so when the member ID is not present, we have to like find a scenario. Okay, what needs to happen to those documents, whether those needs to be sent to the business owners, or how are we going to handle it. Okay, so the first validation is when we are scanning it. Now let's say that the valid member ID is present and all the data is present in all the box. Now whether the scanning application has the ability to scan everything, all the handwritten ones. Okay, for example, if the handwriting is not proper, and if the machine is not able to pick up the data, then will like manually someone has to enter those data, right? If in manually also you are not able to like understand, someone who is doing that scanning is not able to actually understand the handwriting, then what is the scenario there? Okay, what are we going to do with those documents? Whether we can say that missing handwriting, or like very bad handwriting, something like in the comments you need to add it and send it to the claims team. How are we going to put? Because if the application is not able, if everything is proper, handwriting is proper, or if it's a printed information, the application can pick up. But if it's going to be a messed up handwriting, or something like constantly over and over somebody is writing it, and the machine is not able to pick up the data, then manually someone has to interfere, some human has to do that interference, and then they have to like put comments saying that bad handwriting or something. And but a member ID is there, then it can be processed and sent it to the claims team, and claims team, someone has to, the auditors or like someone who's processing the claims, they can view and like to their extent, like they can assume, okay, this is what the member has returned, and they can either process it or send back an email or a notification or letter to the member stating that, or the provider stating that whatever documents you have submitted, please resubmit. So So all these scenarios you need to document it very well. Okay, first is member validation, next one is bad handwriting, and then like how are we going to like process all the data, and then how it needs to be stored in the database. This is a technical part, how it needs to be stored in the database, how are we going to do that lookup, how are we going to retrieve that information, what kind of front end when the claims team when they log in into their application, how this front end has to look, okay, how it has to look, right? So all this will be like from a technical team, they have to decide how this needs to happen or not. But from your perspective as a business analyst, what you will do is this flow you need to understand. Okay, it is coming, scanning team is doing some kind of validation. If it's a valid member, it goes to the database and it finally goes to the claims team. If it's not valid, then what is the route? You have to ask the business owners, okay, what is the route, what needs to happen. And if it's going to be, there are like few scenarios like I told, bad handwriting, or if it's going to be missing some block. So if some mandatory information is missing, what are we going to do, how are we going to process those documents? So all the scenarios you need to document. Okay, that is called as functional decomposition. You're breaking down the scope. Okay, so when this is the overall like scope, right? This is the overall scope for this project. But when you are like breaking, sorry about that, I think the Zoom got ended. Okay, so when we define, yeah, when we say functional decomposition, when you're like breaking down the scope of this, you need to know what is in scope. So only from claims from only from valid member ID, they are in scope, others are not in scope, we are rejecting it here. Okay, when we say writing down the scope, when we do kind of automation, we need to understand that what is in scope and out of scope. Okay, member ID is mandatory, without that we are rejecting. That is, all those documents are out of scope. In scope is valid member ID needs to be there. Okay, and how it's going to be popped up in front end, how are we going to process this is a. So when we say functional decomposition, you're breaking down the product scope into smaller components, and you're doing that kind of modeling here, and you're like telling that, like when we say scope modeling, right, you are drawing that diagram and you're like explaining this, whatever I'm explaining to you, you are explaining this in a diagram perspective. Okay, so you need to draw the diagram, and then you so that like they'll be able to understand what documents will be processed, what will be rejected, and when if it's rejected, what will happen, what is the data flow, whether it's going to the business owners or whether it's going to the members, or how are we going to like, how long we can have this paper claims in that scanning team, like how long they can have after certain days, whether it needs to be removed, or like what's the process we are going to follow. And when we say, or we are going to scan, if something, if there, when we figure out then that the member ID is invalid, are we emailing all those scanned documents directly to the business? Okay, so all this is like I'm giving you a sample of a requirement. So this is all like you need to figure out. And then when we say requirements architecture, right, you can use any of the techniques, and you need to like make sure that business owners understands, if a claim is rejected, it will come to their email ID. Because if there is a member ID is invalid, okay, if the member ID is invalid, our team cannot process that claim. So the all those documents will come to their email ID. You need to make sure and tell them that will be a scenario. Or if they don't want that, then we have to ask them, then what do you want me to do with those documents, what is the process we're going to follow. So I'm just giving you a sample. So there are like multiple techniques. Using those techniques, you can always draw those requirement architecture, and then you have to make sure that each requirement, what's the relationship between one requirement and another requirement, and do it as a diagram, so that like so for that, right, for that architecture, you need all your subject matter experts help, your domain experts help, everybody in your team, you need their help to draw those diagrams. You can also ask them to draw, but yeah, usually architects will they will create a diagram, I'll give it for you, but that will be like very 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 technical diagram. Overall data flow you need to draw. Okay, and then once all these diagrams are available, once all the requirements are validated and prioritized in our backlog, then we have to go for solutioning. Okay. Okay, so solutioning in the sense like, for example, I've told you like for one requirement you can have multiple approaches, right? So it could be for just this one requirement you can have multiple designs. Okay, how are we going to like design the data flow? So your architects may be coming up with like 4 or 5 solutions. Okay, so which is what, but which one is very cost effective, which is like very time which we have SLAs, right? So when we say SLAs is like within this claim has to be processed within 1 day, this claim has to be processed within 2 days, the rejected claims has to be like sent to members within that particular day. So when we have SLAs like that, okay, we have to look for like to do this data flow. Like first one is what is the budget, how much cost it will take. Okay, second one is the time, how long it will take to process a paper claim and send it to the claim processing team, or how long it will take for a complete end-to-end flow, how long it will take, whether it is going to be like 1 day, 2 days, or it's going to be 3 days, like what's the maximum timeline for processing a claim. So depending upon those factors, your solutioning, like the design may be changing. Okay, so your architects may give you like 4 solution options, but among the 4 options, right, only one option will be like will may match your SLA criteria. Okay, if we go for other options, then it may take like maybe long hours, or maybe like it is not within our timeline, right? So always when the architects give you solutions, we have to go with something that is within a budget. That is number one thing. And number two is timelines are very, very, very important. We have SLAs, this will be a compliance issue, any claim has to be processed within that particular like days. Those instructions will be given by the business owners. Okay, so we have to like follow those rules and make sure we go for the correct approach. Okay, so when your technical team and the business owners, when you're doing the solutioning sessions, always they will come up with 1 or 2 designs or multiple designs. Okay, and we always have to go with the most according to the cost and according to the timelines. Okay, these 2 factors are very, very important. Based upon that, we have to confirm on the solution, and then that final solution, only based upon that only you will be like creating all the documents. Okay, so when we say solutioning approaches, um, that's based upon, I would say, like cost and timeline. Okay, how effective we can finish that requirement within particular timeline. Okay, so this is requirement analysis and design definition. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, how can we get in contact with you?
I'm sorry.
How can we get in contact with you, like your information, contact information?
Whose contact information? Your voice is breaking.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I was wondering how can we get your contact information just in case we want to talk to you about something.
No, I'm not doing anything like personal. I mean, like you want to talk about all this like resumes and stuff, right? Yeah. So I'm not doing anything like I'm not teaching it like apart from this time, right? I'm doing personal consultation, but that is like I'm charging for it. So if you want to give me a resume and we want to go through stuff, and if you want those guidelines how to like change your resume and also how it needs to look, then it's a paid consultation. You can always email your stuff, but I'm not like taking any private calls. I'm just doing this 1 hour session, and that's free. And also advanced training next month, it's free, you can always learn, and it's uploaded on YouTube. But if you want like one-on-one private consultation, that's a paid consultation. So if you want me to review a resume, or like you want to update each and everything, then that's going to be paid. Yeah. But I can give you my email ID. If you want, you can send your resume and I can give you all the details.
Okay, can you type it in the chat, please?
Yeah, this is my email ID.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, because I also have a full-time job and I also have 2 kids, so I'm having time constraints. So All I can do is like do this free training and upload in YouTube, and I'm just only taking limited number of consultations. And then because when we get a consultation, right, I have to like guide them like entirely the resume, how to like whatever keywords they have to put in their resume, and then how they have to like handle the interview, and how they have to talk, and what kind of questions they will ask, and also their like previous projects, what they need to add and everything. So that is like very time consuming. It will take at least like 2 to 3 hours of sessions. Maybe like I have to break down the sessions and I have to guide them. So there were a lot of people like approaching me, so I made it as paid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any materials that you share too or not?
Yeah. I have a WhatsApp group. I think the WhatsApp group is shared in the community tab, right? So you can join the WhatsApp group. All every day's notes, materials will I will share with that group.
Like, is it possible to post that link, the WhatsApp link?
It's in the community tab. If you go to the my YouTube channel, and if you go to the community tab, right, it's shared there.
Let me. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, no issues. Okay, does anybody have any other questions? So what the plan is like, there is like one more techniques left. So I'll be teaching on the techniques, and also some of the questions here. So that will be like for the next 2 classes. And then like whoever wants to do the mock interview after the 2 classes, let me know. So anybody here wants to do the mock interview with me after this 10 days training?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to know like how many
Yes.
people, so that I have to like properly plan the timings. How many people wants to do? Can you give your names, please?
Payal.
Okay.
Mahendra.
Payal. Okay, Mahendra. And then anybody?
Doris.
Doris. Okay. And then anybody wants to do a mock interview with whatever I've taught you, like for this 10 days, right? There will be based. The questions will be based upon that only. Okay, 3 people. So what I will do is we'll do like
Akshay charging.
what?
Nothing. Sorry.
Okay. So anybody wants to like do a mock interview, let me know, because I have to like plan the timings accordingly. That's why I'm asking. Okay. Okay, so if there is only like 3 people, then what we will do is like after this, so today is day 8, okay, so we have 2 more sessions, okay. After that, for next week, we are going to have this mock interview. So Payal, Mahendra and Doris, like prepare very well. Mostly it will be everything in Babak, whatever I've taught you, right? I want you to answer like scenario based. Don't give me theory answers. I want you to explain with whatever like example you know. I want you to explain that, and also I want you to be confident. So maybe like every person will get like 20 minutes. So maximum it will be 20 to 30 minutes of interview. So the expectation for me is like you need to be very confident in your voice, and then always any question I ask, you have to answer it only like theoretic. I mean like practically, like with scenario based, and next is like even if you don't know any topic, right, I may ask you like whatever, if something like whatever I didn't teach you also, I may ask you something. You need to like manage that, and you need to answer me. Okay, don't tell me I don't know. Instead of that, like something related to that particular topic, you need to like tell me answers. Okay, so mostly I'll be asking from Babok, but sometimes I may ask you something which I have not taught you at all, but you need to answer me that scenario too. Okay, so what we will do is like tomorrow, and yeah, tomorrow is Thursday, so Friday here it's Memorial Day. In US it's Memorial Day, and Monday is also like holiday for us, so it's a long weekend. I'm going on vacation. So tomorrow we will have a class. So today is day 8, and day 9 tomorrow is day 9, and then the next class will be on Tuesday only, that is day 10. It's on Tuesday. On day 11, okay, next Wednesday, you'll be having this interview. So Payal, Mahendra and Doris, please be prepared for it. So your interview is next Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you have enough time. You
Yeah.
have 1 week time. So please go through all the materials and then prepare very well. Got it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Doris, you have any questions?
Yeah, this is my first time joining the class, so I don't know what they have learned earlier, so I can just brush myself off it.
Yeah, so I have uploaded all the videos in my YouTube. If you go to my YouTube channel, right? If you go to videos, all the like this class, this today is the 8th day, okay, day 8. So all the videos from day 1 it's uploaded in the in my YouTube channel.
All right.
So yeah, you can go and view all. So you have enough time. You have 1 week time. Please go through all the materials and all the videos, and then prepare for the interview. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so there'll be no class on Friday and Monday. So it's a long weekend in the US. So tomorrow we'll have the class, and then the next class will be on Tuesday only. Okay.
Tuesday.
I don't
Okay.
want you to log in, and I'm just informing you in prayer. Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about techniques. Okay. Since we have 6 minutes, I'm going to talk about techniques. So in techniques, right, there are like 50 different techniques. Let's go one by one. See here. So we have focus groups. I've already talked about focus groups in my channel. So if you want to see, okay, let me start with techniques. So according to Babcock, you have 50 different techniques, okay, to gather requirements. There are 50 different techniques. So acceptance criteria, the first 5 techniques is in my YouTube channel. You can always go and check. But what I want to discuss is, let me take that. Yeah. Brainstorming. I know you guys know about brainstorming. Yeah. I think from 6th topic, it's not in YouTube. So let me start with six. Okay, the very first 5 techniques, it's already in my YouTube channel. You can actually watch it. So technique number 6 is like business capability analysis. So these maps are very, very important. So let's say that you are having any kind of requirement, right? So when you're having any kind of requirement, the first one is like, how are we going to like define value? Okay, what is the business value for that requirement, and what's the customer value for that requirement, and what is the risk? Okay, so when we talk about risk, whether it is high risk, medium risk, or low risk. Okay, so for example, when you are automating something, so let's take this example of this claims. Okay, so when we have a claim and we have to process this claim, and so what is the risk associated with this project? Can someone tell me what will be the risk, or what is the value for this one requirement, right? I want you to say what is the value required for this particular requirement, or in this in the whole project, right? What is high value, medium value, low value? What is high risk, medium risk, and low risk? Can someone tell me?
Maybe the cloud storage is not enough to store the details for the factor allocation.
Yeah, so finding that valid member right from the database, like you said, of course, storage that is there. But when we do that member validation, okay, whether this is a valid member or not. So what I have to do is like when the scanning application, when they scan the paper, it has to pull that member, and it has to like validate against, it has to do a lookup against our database, and it has to like make sure that member ID is a valid member ID, right? So that validation has to be, that can happen only if these members are already in our database. So all the members, right, their data needs to be in our database. Otherwise this validation will be a failure if we don't have a member information in our database. And if someone is like giving us paper claims, and this application is doing a lookup against our database, and it's validating whether it's this member is a right member or not, If our system is not able to perform that, then none of the claims will be going to this processing team, right? So that is high risk. You agree with me?
Yes.
Okay, because if let's say the system is not able to identify any of the member data, then what will happen? It's going to like reject, or it's not going to process. It's not going to go to the queue. This claims processing team's queue, right? It is not going to go. None of the details will go. Okay, so one important this requirement that the scanning application, the ability of the scanning application to recognize the member ID, and it has to do a lookup against our existing database. That is a major functionality for this whole process. If that one validation is a failure, then nothing is going to get processed. This processing team is not going to see even one claim in their queue. When they log in, nothing is going to pop up in their front end, right? So everything is going to get rejected. So that validation or that particular testing scenario or like that particular requirement is like very, very high risk or high value. Okay, so that's how you determine when we take a requirement what is high risk, what is medium risk, what is low risk, and what is high value, medium value, and low value. Something is not happening, and because of that, the data flow is like stops. You cannot proceed. Then that is high risk, right? So we need to make sure that validation is happening. So a developer has to make sure that this application is validating against our database or whatever scenarios. For example, it has to like so let's say this application is processing all the information, all the claims. It's not doing any kind of validation. Whatever it is scanned, it is just throwing into this queue. That is also a problem. Okay, so this application has to pull only the valid members and send only the member ID if it is valid, right? Only then it has to send it here. Otherwise, if the handwriting is bad or if the member ID is invalid, or if something like 1 or 2 digits in that member ID is invalid and you're not able to get that member lookup, then those documents, those claims has to go to a different route. It should not go to this team. Maybe it should go to a different team. So this application has to do that validation properly. If there is a mismatch or something is going wrong or the system is not able to identify, then the entire data flow is a collapse. So we will be like getting complaints from claims processing team that stating that invalid members are found in their queue, or we will get a production issue stating that like none of the claims are being seen. So they may be calling us and they're telling us like we are not seeing anything. Okay, not even one claim is there in their queue. So how are we going to fix those prod issues? Okay, so before we fix those, we need to understand the logic. Okay, what is the validation, why this error is happening, where are these documents needs to be routed, and what is the fix we are going to do. If something in production, if there is an issue, how are we going to fix it? Whether it's a problem in the database, whether the member information is missing in the database, or whether this is a scanning team's applications issue. You identify the bug, you identify the defect, and then you are going to ask your developer to fix it. Okay, so very, very important is this business capability analysis. Okay, so for any kind of requirement, what is like high risk, medium risk, and low risk. Okay, it's a very, very important technique, and for that you need to so they have given a diagram here. Okay, so everything for example, user acceptance testing is always high risk, requirements communication is high risk, root cause analysis is high risk, stakeholder analysis is high risk. Okay, and then mentoring or roadmap construction, employment development planning, it's all low risk. So they're given a diagram here, so you can go through this PDF and then you can understand what is high risk and low risk. Whatever I'm saying is like a practical example which is high risk and low risk. Okay, sounds good. I think we have it's about 7:30 here, so I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Thank
day.
you.